we begin? Is there anyone who has not entered their name in the drawing box? It's a chance to win a copy of the Shakopee story. Is there anyone? Last chance. So, Betty, before you present, will you please choose a name out of the box? Yeah. Jim Case.
Oh. Never won anything in his life.
I want Judy. Well, since you won, will you feel free to choose another name out of the box?
Let's see.
Thank you. Charlie Pass? Charlie, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. Enjoy the story. Lots of great information there.
Okay, Joe.
Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Betty Doles. I think she's a genealogist at the Scott County Historical Museum and Society. She's been a great resource there, and we were lucky enough to have her today to present past stories of Shakopee. So, Betty, thank you very much for being here. If you need anything, just let us know. Thank you.
And a founding member of the Shakopee Heritage.
Yes. That's right. Yes.
Oh. Like the way she snuck that in there.
Actually, I'm too old to do this stuff anymore.
No.
But last summer, I was planting grass seed in pouring rain with a rain bonnet and a raincoat. But it wasn't going to rain again for all week, so I was going to do it. And I ran out of seed, and Don came along and offered to go out and get me another seed pack at Lowe's. So I owed him.
That's the way we do things in Shakopee.
But so I went, I used to write articles for the Shakopee Heritage Society, and I also used to write articles for the Scott County Historical Society. So I pulled a file of those old articles, and I found the history of Prohibition and gambling in Shakopee that all of you old-timers know about. And I thought it was an article I had written for the Scott County Society. And after I got all excited about doing it again, I realized I did it for this group. Because I found it in one of your old newsletters. But anyway, it's the failed, Herbert Hoover called it a noble experiment that failed. And while Prohibition lasted in Canada only 2 years, in the United States, it lasted for 13 years. And our proximity to Canada, of course, meant that we were in a good place to be a conduit for Canadian liquor. So trucks, and I'm sure a lot of you know the local trucker who made a fortune hauling liquor from Canada to the United States. But in addition to that, it kind of opened up the field for gangsterism. Al Capone and Kid Can, and then the gangsters started fighting each other to control the gambling and the alcohol. And so anyone who lived here knew that every bar, restaurant, some of the stores, all of them had slot machines during that period. The Prohibition Act started in 1919, ran to 1933. All during that period, there were slot machines, and there was illegal liquor as well. And then when Prohibition ended, it didn't end. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Shakopee suddenly had 29, and I've seen various numbers. I've seen numbers up to 35 and 40. 3-2 bars who were selling alcohol, and I don't think that's true. Jack College said 29, and I think I'll go with it. But still, at that time, our population was probably 2,000. We have 29 3-2 bars. They were all selling strong drink. They were all selling alcohol, you know. And they all had slot machines. There was a Jordan resident who was quoted in the Prior Lake paper as saying Scott County was the worst in the state of Minnesota, and I don't think that was true. I think it was everywhere. It was in all the counties of Scott County. I think Scott County in general and Shakopee in particular were probably worse because they had a long history of the St. Paul House, the Riviera, the Rock Spring, the Mill Pond, all of which had gambling and illegal liquor, and they they were paying off the right people, and when the feds would come out, there were runners that went out and notified everybody, and the machines were all loaded on a truck and took out to a farm about a mile out of town until the heat was off, and then they came back. And it went on for such a long time. Nobody seemed to think it was wrong anymore. Then in 1940, Reverend Henry Soltow and some friends who called themselves the Minnesota Law Enforcement League, and they came out to Shakopee with some warrants, and that they presented to Judge Schwartz, and he refused to sign them. So then they went to Ray Siebenaler, who was the Justice of the Peace, and they invited themselves into his home, and it was mealtime, and he asked them to leave, and then he sued them for invading his house. They obviously had got enough attention, though, to get someone to take them seriously. So Judge Schwartz the local paper said that Judge Schwartz did hear their complaints and look at their warrants on October 25th. That was in 1940. And then on October 28th, and he set a date for early in November, I think November 4th. Then on October 27th, an F.T. Wolf, who claimed to represent this same Minnesota Law Enforcement League, showed up at the home of Attorney Harold Flynn, who happened to be president of the Chamber of Commerce that year. And they told Harold Flynn that if he would get the boys, or he could stop the raids if the boys would pay $6,500 and $400 a week. Wow. And Harold Flynn was smart enough to to delay it a little bit. And first he talked him down to 3,000 instead of 6,500, and set a meeting date when they would return. And before they returned, he arranged to have a secretary in the house to transcribe the meeting, and the house was surrounded with local law enforcement. So when the $3,000 was handed over and the men started to leave, they were arrested for extortion. And in the following weeks, the newspapers were full of this about the bad boys of Shakopee, but these do-gooders that came in and messed with our playpen. But in the papers, if you go through the papers of that period, it's all about the enforcers who did wrong. There's very little about the locals, but eventually there, if you read through all the print, 16 local bartenders and so forth were fined about $200 apiece, and most of them were from Shakopee. But there was some fallout, and that was that Sheriff Masonbrink was removed by Governor Stawson, and for not enforcing gambling laws. And one of the favorite stories of Shakopee people for years were you could walk down Lewis Street, and on both sides of the street were these big fancy cars. But you looked in the Rock Spring windows, and there was nobody there but the bartender and one guy. Everybody else was downstairs at the gambling machines. But when Masonbrink was removed, J.P. Wormerskirchen, who was he was deputy, and he was appointed as acting sheriff, and he did a pretty good job. He cleaned it up, but little by little they started coming back, and but never as open as it was before. Everything was a little more controlled after that. And then in 1947, I can remember when he came home from World War II, and his mother lived across the street, and he was visiting her. But Pat Thielen came back to town, and Pat Thielen had a reputation. He was tough, and he was afraid of no man and nothing. He just had no fear. I can remember my brother Joe, who was 6'2", and he was not a small guy, but they were about, well, Pat would have been a classmate of my brother Barney, but they were in school at the same time, and my brother Joe said if he saw Pat walking down the street, he'd cross the street because he didn't want any trouble with him. But who was mayor? Kavanaugh was mayor at that time. And Kavanaugh had a letter from, and now Stawson had retired, and Governor Youngdahl had written a letter to our mayor giving him 10 days to get rid of the slot machines, or Youngdahl would do it for him. So at that time, Pat had gotten a job as a bouncer at the St. Paul house that was full of slot machines too. And one day while he was working at the St. Paul house, the mayor and several other people came to call on him and ask him if he would take the job of police officer in Shakopee and to get rid of the slot machines. And he agreed, and the following year he became chief of police. And he went around and told, and he did know all of the people who were running this town. And he went around and warned them what he was going to do. And then he proceeded to do it, and he arrested 32 people and confiscated a lot of slot machines, and everybody was crazy, and they threatened him, but he was not afraid. And he did finally clean it up, and that was kind of the end of our reputation as Little Shop. And he then was chief of police for 30 years. And that's why that book that you published about Cat's Leg, you know, I can't tell you how many of those I've given away. Because the old timers from Shakopee loved that book. Because everybody knew Pat, and everybody knew how tough he was. I can remember my mother saying when he became sheriff, he said, "It takes one to know one." And he somebody else was quoted as saying he was the right person at the right time in the right place, and he did manage to keep the stuff open. And that's our illustrious history. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Where did the slot machines go to?
A lot of them went to the family that kind of was, and I'm not going to name names because but there were several families who owned most of them, and they went back to them, and I'm sure they sold them in other markets. Pat Dillon once stole one.
Mom.
He was out at Hollywood Inn, I think it was, and as a lark, they had stolen some colored Christmas tree lights and had them in their car. And then they went in and were playing the slot machines, and it wasn't paying out. So he threw the thing up against the wall, trying to get it to spit, and it still didn't. And so he picked it up and walked out with it. He stole the slot machine, but he knew nobody would do anything because they weren't supposed to have it. So they arrested him for stealing the light bulbs. But those things happened, you know. So anything else?
I think he had a train. Because I can remember two of the policemen talked about this. How when they were on force, he would have them take food to people that were in dire straits.
Yes.
And he said, "I can't take it there because they were problems."
Yeah.
So he would say, "You have to hold them."
I remember my two boys went down a street, well, a neighbor, they were just little, and they went down to this house on 2nd Street, and they thought it was a haunted house. All this stuff worked, mines and stuff. So they walked in, there was somebody that didn't think little kids were funny. Anyway, that's you and got called. And I, you know, they were always home at noon. You know, it was in those days where you didn't have to worry about. I didn't think it. Anyways, car pulls into the driveway, and Pat gets out, and John had just come home from lunch. He said, "No, don't let him." And I said, "Okay." And here's these 3 little eyes over the back seat, like. He said, "The kid broke into ugly elbows."
Oh.
So they didn't do that to him, but he was really nice. He said, "You really don't have to have any punishment because they really, you know."
I scared him to
They got,
death.
yeah.
You know, years ago when I was program chairman for the Shakopee Heritage Society, and Marcia had suggested that I have Pancho Cayley. Remember Pancho Cayley? She said, "Have Pancho Cayley come and speak." And so I talked to Pancho, and I thought we had an agreement that he was going to come and speak at our next meeting. So the night before the meeting, I called to make sure he remembered, and his wife said, "He's not here, he went up north."
Ah.
And I said, "But he's supposed to talk to our group." And she said, "Oh, I bet he was scared and he took off." So luckily, Don Wagner had something that he could.
In fact, he finally did come to another meeting and
Yes.
came with Donnie Beasley.
And they
The two of them
played off
played,
one another. Yes, they were
But,
great.
you know, and then I was ready to, I was a little ticked. I thought, the heck with him. But a lot of people wanted to hear it, you know. So I tried again, and this time I gave him a topic. I didn't leave it up to him. I said, "Tell us about Pat Thiel." And he did. And then he brought another officer with him. And they were telling us the stories about Pat.
That was Donnie Beasley. And Donnie
Yes.
went
Yes.
on to tell a story about how Pat Thiel.
Yes.
At some point, when Johnny Beasley was a new, it was his job in the morning, he was pick up Pat.
Yes.
Who was in the morning. So this particular morning, he went to Taylor's house, and Pat was sitting at the kitchen table with a pair of pliers trying to extract. That's how tough I got.
You know, and I grew up on Atwood Street, and Pat grew up on 3rd Avenue or 2nd Avenue, just 2 doors down from Jerome Jasper, so about a block and a half. So he was in the neighborhood, so we all knew him. And but the other guys, you know, guys his age, they might cause a little trouble, but when Pat said knock it off, they knocked it off. So he did have that authority figure in him that people respected the fact that he was tough and was afraid of no man.
Betty, there's
Jerry?
a wonderful story about Pat and Minneapolis game coming out to a Rumble.
Yes,
And you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And who stopped that was Pat.
he met him at the end of the bridge
Yes,
with a
he
gun
did.
in his hand and said, "Turn around, boys, it's not going to happen here." And they turned around and left. Anything else? Oh, we could talk about Judy's illustrious ancestors. She's descended from Deacon Dunham, who came 10 years after the Pilgrims.
Okay.
Next speaker.
Anything else?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Well,
Okay.
we'll all go home and work on our.
Hey,
Thank you
hey, hey.
very much, Betty, for being here today.
Thank you.
Not any other business, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
So move.
A motion by Pat, second by Don. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today.